We begin with the Trump administration's latest push to secure a peace deal in Ukraine. CBS News senior foreign correspondent Elizabeth Palmer has more from our London bureau.
Everyone involved in the negotiations for this peace deal is making positive noises, except, that is, for the Russians. Ukraine has signaled its support. The Europeans are firmly behind Ukraine. And White House spokeswoman Caroline Leavitt tweeted that there has been tremendous progress. But what the actual terms of the deal are, nobody knows at this stage. The original proposal came on the weekend. It was a 24-point plan that appeared to be a win for Russia and a capitulation for Ukraine. Crucially, it was going to demand that Ukraine give up 20% of its land, most of it occupied by Russia currently, but also some that Ukraine is still successfully defending. The proposal also stimulated that Ukraine would reduce the size of its armed forces by about a third and forfeit the right to join NATO. Also, the security guarantees for Ukraine in the event that Russia attacked again were pretty squishy. There were no promises in that deal that the U.S., for example, would intervene or help. European leaders weren't impressed. They pushed back on Ukraine's behalf. And there is a counter-proposal now public. It's lost the clause on Ukraine never joining NATO and also the shrinking of its military. But we just don't know whether that proposal has been incorporated into the version of the agreement that's currently on the table. Russia is not sounding overjoyed about all this, but for the moment is just saying it hasn't received anything official to accept or reject. So the next step may well be a visit by President Zelensky to the White House. Could be quite soon, before the end of the month, to iron out details with President Trump on a final version. And then the agreement will have to be put to the Russians. And then anything could happen, including a flat-out rejection. We'll just have to wait and see. Back to you.
Elizabeth Palmer, thank you. Now let's go to CBS News reporter Erica Brown at the White House. Erica, what are we hearing from President Trump about the next steps for these peace talks?
Well, Lindsay, right now the White House is touting what they are calling tremendous progress towards this peace plan to end the war between Russia and Ukraine, but it is with what appears to be some measured and cautious optimism. Earlier today, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said that there were still some delicate but not insurmountable details that still needed to be worked out with further talks between Ukraine, Russia, and the United States. And President Trump took to Truth Social, saying that he was deploying top officials for those further talks, including a special envoy Steve Witkoff headed to Moscow to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin, and Army Secretary Dan Driscoll meeting with Ukrainian officials. And that comes after Secretary Driscoll also met with Russian officials, according to sources in Abu Dhabi. Now, as you noted earlier there, President Trump said that his original 28-point plan had been fine-tuned. That, of course, comes after it received some criticism from European officials and even some lawmakers here in Washington, pushing back on some of the concessions that Ukraine would be forced to make, including cutting the size of its military and abandoning efforts to join NATO. But the president said that that initial plan had been fine-tuned to include input from both sides. The president also said that he looks forward to meeting with Zelensky and Putin, but only after the deal has been finalized or when it's in its very final stages. Lindsay?
Erica Brown, thank you. Army Secretary Dan Driscoll has emerged as a leading figure in these negotiations. He met with Russian officials in Abu Dhabi today to discuss the peace proposal with Ukraine. President Trump is also sending him to meet with the Ukrainians. Earlier, I spoke with CBS News national security contributor Sam Vinograd about Driscoll's involvement, along with U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, and how diplomacy is playing out behind closed doors.
Well, I think there's two different pieces of this. There is ensuring that individuals who are known to have the president's ear and a close relationship with the president to be present. That's a Witkoff-Kushner piece of this. And at the same time, you do need subject matter experts to work on things like military concessions and NATO membership and more technical aspects of the deal. So I actually do think it's smart that various players are involved in these negotiations. Putin is going to need to know that any proposal that is presented to him has the backing of the U.S. president. At the same time, both parties are going to need to engage on the technical details with mediators that understand what they're discussing, whether it's the military aspects of the deal, frozen Russian assets. We could see Secretary Bessent involved, and more technical details.